Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Argue About Plants, the podcast for people who love plants.
But not always the same ones. I'm Carol Collins. I'm Associate Editor at Fine Gardening Magazine.
And I'm Danielle Sherry. I'm the Executive Editor here at FG. And today, because we're feeling kind of fallish, we're going to talk about our favorite sedums, which... Holy cow, Carol. I can't believe there's a topic that we still haven't covered on this podcast, but we have not covered favorite sedums. What are your feelings about sedums? Do you have deep feelings?
I love them, but you might have let it slip in a recent staff meeting that you don't have entirely love for the sedums. I don't know.
I don't have a great affinity for overused sedums. I think I threw Autumn Joy under the bus because Autumn Joy for me falls into that same category as Happy Returns Daylily or Stelladora Daylily, or even let's see what else. Blue Rug Juniper. I think it falls in that category, and I feel bad about it, quite frankly, that I said that, because those other plants, the reason that we get down on them is because we see them in the parking lots of, big box stores. But the reason they're in the parking lots of big box stores is these things are freaking bomb-proof. I mean, you can, hit them with a snowplow and they still come back. So, I feel bad for picking on Autumn Joy. I think the other thing for me is... a lot of the, I'll call them shrub-like or, autumn larger sedums, they have a tendency to kind of do that splaying thing, particularly if they get too top-heavy, which is kind of a bummer because you wait all season for those big, nice, umbel-like flowers. And, a lot of times they do split and kind of do that ugly thing. But I think, as I've researched this episode, stay away from the really fertile soil, give them as much sun as possible, don't overwater them, and, you're really then hedging your bets that splaying won't happen. But I do like the little ones. I like the ground covery ones.
I like them too. I like them all.
Yeah.
I thought we might have our first actual argument on Let's Argue About Plants.
Well,
let's fight about it.
Just wait, baby. Just wait. I don't know what you got on your list, but I'm geared up. I've had some coffee this morning and I'm ready to go. So what's first on your list? I mean, Carol, did you do some upright sedums, some creeping sedums, like the whole gamut, or did you just stick to kind of one habit category?
I did. My first one is an upright, and then the rest of them are the small creeping ones. So
would you say that you like the creeping ones better, or is that just how the cookie crumbled on this one?
I do like the creeping ones better, mainly because most of the upright ones are just like deer candy. Yeah. The deer will walk through an entire garden bed and chomp down the Autumn Joy, and I honestly haven't gotten flowers on Autumn Joy probably in 5 years for that reason.
Yes.
It comes back every year, but it never makes it through the season without getting abuse from our deer. So that's one downside, is that some of them are deer-like them, but the little ones they leave alone.
Yes,
so I guess that's why
true.
I grow more of the little ones.
That's true. Well, and we should do a disclaimer at the top of the show. So we're about to publish a sedums article that was written by Brent Horvath, who is the master of sedums out in the Midwest. He literally wrote the book on sedums, and right in the beginning of the article, we decided to acknowledge the fact that the genus Sedum has undergone a lot of DNA testing through graduate students in plant pathology and such, and plant botany. And we understand it has moved into 3 different genera over the course of the past few years. We've got Pseudosedum, we've got Hylotophium, we've got, there's another one in there and it's escaping me right now. But we know that some of these have moved, some of them have not. Some of them have moved and then moved back into the genus Sedum again. It is a holy nightmare. And I'm just going to say right at the top, for what we did for the article was say, hey, we acknowledge that these DNA tests are going on and some of these have changed names. But for the sake of aggravation and headaches, we're going to stick with Sedum. So all of mine, for the most part, I'm going to be calling them Sedum, give you the species, give you the cultivar name. I don't know what you did, Carol, but that's my disclaimer at the top of the show.
Well, my first one is in the Hylotophium category. and it's been there a while. So that's I put that in the show notes as its genius. But you can still find these if you search sedum and the name we give you. You are going to have no problem finding these because that's the common name. And right.
And in fact, a lot of nurseries,
in
fact, a lot of nurseries still are listing them as sedum because there's this, this stumbling block to people who have always come in and asked for sedums. They're not labeling them as these new names anyway. So, all right. Well, with that being said, and that introduction to your new genus, what's your first plant?
So I've got Metrona sedum, and that's Hylotelephium Metrona.
Mm-hmm.
Hardy from zones 3 to 9, very hardy. And this is one of the sort of, I'm not going to say shrubby because it stays pretty small, but it gets 18 to 24 inches tall and 12 to 18 inches wide. So it has a nice upright habit. Like a lot of these that we're going to be talking about, it loves full sun, well-drained soil. It tolerates chalky alkaline soil for you folks in the Southwest and other places that have that alkaline soil. And it does just fine in sand and gravelly soil. Loves poor soil. Really, it prefers poor soil to rich, wet soil, as you were saying earlier. But this one is a crowd favorite. It has the RHS Royal Horticultural Society Award of Merit in England and multiple European awards. And I feel like I see this one a lot when we're out and about in the gardens that we go and photograph. This one I see it out there. So I know a lot of you are growing it. And unlike Autumn Joy, which is sort of the same size and shape, this one is deer resistant. I've never had deer touch Metrona.
What?
Yeah. And it may be because of where I planted, but I feel like I have other sedums that are close by and the deer eat those and they don't eat this one. And I really don't know why.
Oh my gosh, we need to do some like chemical compositions on Metrona. I mean, maybe it's got like a wonder, microchemical in its makeup that is deer resistant.
I don't know. Well, here's something that might be turning the deer off. The color of its stems and leaves are kind of funky. I love them, but it has sort of a bluish purplish leaf. And then the stems are this dark purple color. So maybe the deer just look at it and think, well, that doesn't look delicious. I really don't know. I don't know what the secret is, but I do know the deer have left this one alone for me.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So it doesn't bloom early in the season like some of the little ones do. This one is more of a late season bloomer. So late here in Connecticut, late August, early September, you're going to start seeing the flower buds before you see the flowers. And I love when I was looking this up for my research, someone described the flower buds as looking like broccoli. And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess it kind of does look like broccoli.
Kind of nailed that description, yeah.
Yeah, and I really never thought of it like that. But when they open up, it's these pretty, like, soft pink star-like flowers. And unlike some of the ones that do, like, a dome of flowers that almost covers the whole plant, these are a little more, I don't think sparse is the most polite word, but they have some air between them. They're, and you can still see those gorgeous dark stems and the pale pink flowers look so good against those dark stems and the dark foliage. And they stay pink for, well into fall, and then they go like a good chocolate brown as you go in after the frost hits. And those hold, they're very tough and they hold well into winter, and they look really cool with the frost on them. So I feel like this is a sort of 3-season interest plant. They will get broken down eventually if, enough snowbanks form over them. And by spring, you just cut it to the ground and it comes back. But very sturdy, a cool plant, for a long time in the garden from spring right into winter.
It almost sounds like a like it, love it. If you like Autumn Joy, you're going to love Metrona just because it, some of those things that we kind of knock Autumn Joy for, Metrona makes up for in its makeup. So, all right, Metrona, that's a good one. That's a good one. I like it. Nice and shrubby. So we did get a shrubby one in there. I think I might have one on my list. But you know what? I'm going to go with a creeper because most of the sedums I have and most of the sedums I like are the more ground hugging, ground cover type. I think some of them are grown more for the foliage than for the flowers, and I would put this one in that category. So my first one I'm going to do is Boogie Woogie sedum. And that is stayed in Sedum Boogie Woogie, and it's zones 3 to 9. Most sedums, we can probably safely say, are 3 to 9, 4 to 9. I did not come across anything that dipped into zone 5. Maybe you did, but these are tough plants. And I'm just going to say right up at the top of the show here, every sedum I have likes full sun, well-drained soil on the lean side, and will tolerate some alkaline soil. I have acidic soil, so they tend to do pretty well for me too, so there you go. But Boogie Woogie is about 6 to 8 inches tall and about 16 inches wide. Allegedly. I've had mine for 3 or 4 years now. It's not gone past 12 inches. So this is a nice little, kind of rounded tuft in the garden. The leaves are these small teardrop green leaves that have a little serrated edge around the outside, and they kind of make up almost rosettes. But the thing about it is right where that serration is, there we go, I got it. Serration is around the outside of the leaf is white. Very, very bright white. So you've got this starkly variegated tuft of a plant, and it has those same succulent sedum leaves, is drought tolerant, which is amazing. Then that variegation, and I don't know if this is universal for most sedums, but I know quite a few variegated sedums that when they get hit with a little bit of cool weather, that white tends to turn pink. So you get a little bit of fall color on this Boogie Woogie sedum, which is kind of just a cool extra bonus. It does bloom. It has yellow, small, maybe $50 size umbel-like flowers. Those appear early. It's not an autumn bloomer. It's more of an early summer bloomer. I will say, one bummer about this plant is that the flowers turn brown. And in fall, where we appreciate like brown flowers because we're like, oh, great structure for the winter. In early summer, it kind of looks like they're dead. So you have to go through and deadhead this if you're a type A gardener like I am in some respects. But other than that, it's just a really adorable, variegated, tough sedum. And it really, really does kind of catch your eye because it doesn't look like that normal, quote-unquote, blue-green foliage sedum. It's really got that nice variegation to it. And I just love the name, Boogie Woogie. That's actually one of our nicknames for our dog is Boogie. So maybe that's why I like this plant so much. And we got the plant before we got the dog. So there you go. All right, Carol, so we've got an upright, we've got a creeping sedum. What's next on your list?
So I have another creeping sedum. This one is blue spruce creeping sedum, and that is either sedum rupestre or sedum reflexum. Those are synonymous. And to be honest, I don't know which one is the currently accepted species. But anyway, if you look for sedum blue spruce, you'll find it. This one is widely available. Hardy zones 4 to 9. It gets 6 to 8 inches tall and like 12 to 24 inches wide. And full sun, well-drained soil, little afternoon shade is okay for this one. It is deer and rabbit resistant. And I feel like we talk a lot about deer, but for these little guys, those are the ones the rabbits get, right? Mm-hmm. And because they're, right down at rabbit level, but the rabbits will leave this one alone. It flowers for about a month in early to midsummer, so an earlier blooming one, and it has yellow star-shaped flowers. But the real selling point for this one is the foliage color. It's like a blue spruce. It's like the color of a really good blue spruce, and the shape of the stems. It looks like, if you do a close-up photo, like if you all look in the show notes, you'll see it looks like a little grove of tiny little spruce trees. So cute. So, the really fine, almost needle-like foliage, um, and that great color, which pretty much stays that way throughout summer. But as we get into the winter months, it may take on sort of more pinkish tinges like a lot of these do in cold weather, but pretty evergreen. This one is native to the mountainous regions in Central and Western Europe. And so it's really super good. And like if you're doing a sort of an alpine themed planting or rock garden, it's really good for that. I see it a lot. People use it in containers because it makes a great little filler and it brings that color in. And I mean, really the only thing it doesn't like is soggy soil. It will rot if you grow it in soggy soil. So don't do that, and don't let it get, these little guys too, the big problem can be you plant it and then a bigger plant sort of flumps over it and it doesn't get enough light. So it really needs its own space. It needs a place where it's not going to be in the shadow of another plant, because then it won't get enough sun. But other than that, super easy to grow. And it's good, for filling space. It's like a ground cover.
I would almost think, is it one that could probably be in like cracks and crevices of like stone walls and fill in maybe on the outskirts of the pathways and such as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really, a lot of these are really good for that. I love seeing sedums coming out of a stone wall. I think that's kind of what they're made for. Here's a fun fact. The genus name of sedum comes from the Latin sedio, which means to sit. And it's about the habit. They like to sort of sit and sprawl over rocks, and like they can almost grow like right in in any kind of little crack on a rock. So I thought that was
That's
cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
See, plant people, we shouldn't be changing this genus. It's like perfectly suited. It means sit. Come on now. I'm writing a letter to someone. Whoever's changing all these names, I'm writing them a letter. Well, that one sounds adorable. I just love the fact that, I mean, it's called blue spruce sedum. It looks like a blue spruce. I mean, that's awesome. Well done, plant people who named that one. I'm gonna throw it back to an upright sedum. Now, I will say, caveat, I have not grown this one. It was featured in our new plant section that we did, and you know what? I didn't look. It was either last year or the year before. This plant has been around for about 2 years now, but it's called Nightlight Sedum. And this is an upright habit. It is a shrubby form that's zones 3 to 9, a little bit larger than Autumn Joy, a little bit larger than Metrona, topping out at about 26 inches tall and about 30 inches wide. So you can kind of picture that as like a flattened pancake type shrub. It's got this really tight, well-branched habit though, and I feel like this is where a lot of the breeding is going with these upright sedums, is that they're trying, especially Brett Horvath, who's doing a lot of sedum breeding, is doing these multi-branched, very, very dense sedums, so you don't get that, midsummer splay that a lot of these previous species and cultivars do. It has gorgeous black foliage, and truly black, very, very dark purple. It fades to a bit of a gray-green cast as we move into summer, but as it's doing that, it starts to get those teeny tiny broccoli-like florets on it, but these florets are yellowish pink. So it truly looks like a bunch of spotlights are kind of popping up on this black foliage, and it just looks like somebody sprinkled it with fairy lights, basically. Those yellowish pink buds eventually open to a light pink flower, but it kind of holds a yellow bract to it, so you always kind of get that glowy effect on this plant, and it's still maintaining that purplish foliage as you creep down into summer, into fall, and eventually those do open all the way fully up. The plant dies out, but those bracts are held through the winter. Like you said, they look beautiful when they're dusted in frost. This is a cloud-like form, though. This one has a lot of smaller flowers, but they completely cover the plant in a dome-like fashion. I have it on my 2023 must-have list. You know, I've kind of given up on a lot of my upright sedums, but I'm hopeful that it'll integrate well into my garden because I have a lot of shrubs, and this kind of almost mimics a small shrub in perennial form. And I love the idea of that contrast of that black foliage with that really light colored flower. I feel like that black foliage is going to carry you through most of the spring and summer, and then just when you thought it was all over, as we get into late summer and fall, it puts on those night lights, which is really cool. So again, that's Nightlight Sedum. That's fairly new. As I said, it came out this past year or the year before, so it might be a little bit harder to find in your nurseries right now, but give it another year, and I think by 2023 you might be able to find it a little more readily. I'm hoping so, because it's on my shopping list. All right, we seem to keep going back and forth. This is pretty good here. We got a low grower, we got an upright, we got a low grower, and what are you going to do, Carol?
It's low growers from here on out.
All right, me too. Oh, no. I take that back. We've paced this episode well. All right, give me this low grower that you've got on your must-have list.
Okay, so this one is called Dragon's Blood Sedum in the United States, but in Germany, where it was introduced, they call it Schorabusser Blut.
Wow.
Which I am assuming means dragon's blood, but I didn't look it up. But in here, if you're looking for this one, dragon's blood is the name to look for. And this one's hardy from zones 4 to 9. And it gets 3 to 6 inches tall and 12 to 18 inches wide. So if you're doing this one as a ground cover, you can put those plants on 12-inch centers and they'll grow together and form a nice mat. The straight species of this, the Sedum spurium, is native to the Caucasus. So you'll often hear it called Caucasian sedum or Caucasian stonecrop. And the other common name is two-row sedum, and that refers to how the leaves are arranged on the stem. So it has these, fairly short stems, like, maybe the stem might get 12 inches long, but probably not, more like 6 inches long. It doesn't go up, it goes out, and it has 2 rows of leaves that go along the sides of it. And then at the end, it's like a pretty little rosette. And the dragon's blood name comes from the fact that while these leaves are more or less green in the summer, they have a really nice red tinge. And that tinge gets even more pronounced as you get into colder, frostier weather. It really turns quite red. You'll notice if you're growing this plant that the lower leaves will drop off in winter, but the little rosettes at the end of each stem are evergreen. Ooh. And so you get that red color from those little rosettes all through the winter. Super cute. I have this mixed with some other low-growing sedums, and so the others are different colors, and this brings in that red tone. And when it flowers, the flowers are pink, which is nice. And it's a late season flower. I think that's toward the end of summer. It likes acidic soil, okay. Unlike the ones that like chalky soil. And sand and gravel are totally fine, just like, a lot of these. And just like this one, I think is a great pass along plant. I think I got this from, a little handful that someone gave me, and it multiplies and spreads quite beautifully. It's a good naturalizer.
I think we haven't touched on that either, but sedum it's probably one of the easiest plants to propagate in regards to being a perennial. The ground cover ones, a lot of them actually root along those longer stems, so you literally can just pull a chunk out and pop it back in the ground, and they do really well. The upright ones, or even more of the shrubby ones, are super easy to cleave in half. Sometimes if you get a 2-gallon perennial to start with, you can cleave that in half or do simple division on that. Before you even plant it, you've already got 2 plants. And then I don't know about you, but the next one I'm going to talk about, you can even just take a leaf cutting of some of these and shove it right back into the ground. And as long as you're good about keeping it watered until it establishes some roots, it will reroot that way too. So, I mean, talk about pass along plants and easy plants, you know, to give as gifts. These are so nice that way. So I have a question about dragon's blood. Do you have that mixed in with the blue spruce sedum? Is that one of the ones that mingles?
Yes,
very cool.
And they look really cute next to each other. Those two colors look great together.
I mean, talk about just like a really cool little seasonal effect. You know, you've got the blue spruce and then a little bit of red, you know, as the season creeps towards Christmas. You got some holidayness going on in that garden of yours. I like it.
True.
I like it. All right, I'm going to do my hands down all-time favorite sedum, bar none. And that's Plum Dazzled Sedum. Now, here's the thing. There was a series of sedums that were released. They eventually all fell under the umbrella of the Sun Sparkler series. They all look very similar. There's 3, maybe 4 at this point. I think this is Plum Dazzler, but I know that I also got Dazzleberry. But I decided to talk about Plum Dazzled instead because I know that we have an expert coming up who honed in on Dazzleberry. But Plum Dazzle Sedum, just a sedum rupestre, Plum Dazzled, zones 4 to 9, not a zone 3. I don't know. Give it a whirl if you're in zone 3 because, you know, this is a tough and hardy little plant. But Plum Dazzled, which is part of that Sun Sparkler series, has really, really dark purple foliage. I mean, comes out in spring when it puts on that new growth, and you would swear that, you know, somebody just went by with a purple Sharpie marker and kind of scribbled on it. It's really, really, really striking. And then, you know, as we progress into spring and into summer, it does get a little bit of like a chalky blue cast on the outside. Now, you know, it's kind of hard to tell because you look this up online and you'll get, you know, 8,000 different variations. Some people will show it as that dark purple. Some people show it a little chalkier. Rest assured, it's either Plum Dazzled or Dazzleberry. It's one of the two, and they're very similar. So this is going to get 8 to 10 inches tall and about 18 inches wide. That's spot on. I've had this for several years. That is exactly where it landed as far as mature growth is concerned. It's really, really beautiful just as a foliage plant, but then it's a late blooming of the ground cover sedum. So normally ground cover sedums put on their flowers, you know, early to midsummer. This one is just starting to come into bloom now in late summer, early fall for us. And the flowers are shockingly bright magenta. So they're held upright in this loose umbel-like format. And just, if you can envision that kind of dark purple foliage, bright pink flower, it's just shocking, and it's a really nice hit of color at the end of the season when you're not really getting much else from the garden. The pollinators go bananas over this. If I can find it, I'll put up a video in the show notes of the bees just going absolutely crazy because they're just like, oh my god, a flower. I didn't know there'd be flowers this time of year, which is amazing. And it's a tough plant. I've got it on a hill in really, really crappy soil in full sun, and I will also say it is in my Vol superhighway. It is definitely along there. I definitely see holes of where the voles surface in the area, and they haven't touched this plant. Now that I have said that on this podcast, it is a jinx, and we all know that I'm going to go out there tomorrow and the voles will have wiped them all out, but for years, they have left them alone. So, is it vole resistant? Yes. Is it vole proof? That's to be said yet. But Plum Dazzled is definitely, if I had to only grow one sedum, this would definitely be it. I am absolutely in love with it. It is a beautiful, beautiful plant. And I would say that you probably wouldn't go wrong with planting any of the sedums that are in the Sun Sparkler series. Carol, do you have any of the Sun Sparklers perchance?
I don't, but when I was researching the other sedums that we're talking about, like I did come across it quite a bit, and they're really a cool series. Very, very cool.
Very colorful. Definitely colorful. All right, we are barreling towards our last plant here, Carol, and you already let us know it's a low grower. Which low grower did you choose?
Okay, so this is maybe a gimme because I think this is a lot of people's favorite of the low growers, but I wanted to talk about Angelina.
Oh, and the crowd goes wild. Woo! It is a good one and very popular.
Very popular. Yes, yeah. This one, you want to talk about color. This one is gorgeous, gorgeous. Gold to chartreuse most of the year. Very bright. And it has a similar habit to blue spruce. And they look a lot alike. They are directly related. This is a Sedum rupestre. And so the little needle-like leaves, the low-growing habit, 4 to 6 inches tall, 12 to 24 wide, spreads and naturalizes very easily. I have gravel, like just literally gravel, where a little piece of it got in there, and it has formed over the course of the summer a whole new little plant just from one cutting that fell into the gravel. Mm-hmm. So super tough. It will be a great pass along plant because it makes a lot of itself, so you have enough to give away or to move into other areas. It is evergreen, and green is not the right word because it becomes reddish and orangish in the winter. And that's really fun to, right when things are sort of getting boring in the garden, Angelina is there going, hey, what about this color? And then the next week, what about this color? Isn't this even better? So I have this mixed with the dragon's blood and the blue spruce. And so we've got yellow, green, bluish green, and red. And I don't know, they look fun together. And this is in an area where next to my walkway, so where I really don't want something taller, mm-hmm. but it adds a lot of interest, and I don't really need to touch it or do anything to it unless I'm passing along cuttings to anybody that's interested.
And Angelina is one of those ones that literally you can pick up the stem and it's a plethora of hair roots on each one of the little stems. So, I don't know if you purposely threw a cutting into the gravel, but I know at my house, like occasionally I'll nip it with like the string trimmer or something, and a piece of it will fly into the driveway, and then it roots there. It's a happy little accident.
Yeah, no, I didn't do it on purpose, but it didn't care.
Yeah, it's happy where it is. It's happy where it is. That's awesome. Yeah. Angelina, I mean, just a classic favorite, and I feel like great container plant. Great in the garden, great in, very tough, obviously tough to grow areas like a gravel driveway. It does really, really well. So do you have a picture? Do you happen to have a picture? I'm going to put you on the spot of all three of those mingling together.
I do, yes.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Go to the show notes, finegardening.com, hit that podcast tab. You'll get the plant list, and you'll be able to see photos of all these plants and a very cool photo of those three sedums mingling together. All right, I'm ending on an upright, which I can't believe I had two uprights after saying I don't like upright sedums, but I had to go with this one. So this is one of the weird ones. This is hylotephalin. Oh, I'm not going to be able to do it. I just have an affinity for not being able to say it. Okay, say it for me, Carol.
Hylotelepium.
Telepium. Carl. Yep, that's right. Good old Carl. And you know what? Maybe I picked this because I've always been somebody who loves people who name their dogs Ralph or, names a goldfish Fred. I just think it's hilarious to name a plant Carl. And I mean, no disrespect by that, because I have a friend named Carl, and I feel like I'm going to have to give him part of this plant. I inherited this, I think, from our old test garden, which now we are going on probably 7 or 8 years since we moved from there. But we had a lot of different upright sedums that at one point in time we were playing with the idea of doing a trial on them, which kind of fizzled out when we had to move. But I got a piece of this sedum called Carl. And I'm like, all right, this is fun. This is like my goldfish Fred. And I popped it into my garden. Eventually, it reached about 18 inches tall and wide. It has a more vase-like habit. It's very, very rigid and kind of upright. Has red stems and a very bright green flower to it. So that's kind of a pretty combination just as is. And then I'll say that it's more compact. That vase-shape habit, it's very it's like it got, some sort of like corset, just pulled it all together. And then at the top, it gets these super, super bright neon pink flowers. Later in the season, it is definitely an autumn bloomer. But I will say it's a plant that just hasn't required much from me. I threw it in, a really poor area, full sun, not really, the best soil, well-drained soil. It's zones 3 to 9, so obviously it skates through just fine in my garden. And it's a good plant. I have divided it several times. And I will say a funny aside on this is that you are right about the upright sedums, that the deer do tend to frequent them more because the deer will take down Carl. But I almost love that when they do eventually find it and give it a chop, they're almost doing the Chelsea chop for me. So I'll have pieces of this that go into bloom, early September. And then I have pieces that won't come into bloom until October because the deer have come through, chopped it in half, and really kind of set back that bloom time. So I appreciate the deer giving me a little, a little garden maintenance without me even asking them to. But I think the one thing I will say about this plant that I haven't done is I haven't divided it and given it to my friend Carl. So that's what my plan is for next spring. I will be chopping up Carl Sedum and giving my friend Carl some pieces of it because everybody needs a namesake plant, right?
That's right. That's a great idea. I when you mentioned the trial that we did, I wanted to tell the folks at home one thing we learned from that trial. Carl was planted right in the soil in the test garden, which is, gritty, not overly fertile, and Carl was doing great. We had a bunch of sedums that somebody, not to be named but not present here, put in a raised bed, and the soil in that bed was almost 100% peat. It was soil-less mix. And the sedums that went into that mix did not do well. They basically stayed the same plug size. And so just like a tip for the folks at home, these sedums tend to like grittier soil. And so even if you're doing a soilless mix, add some kind of mineral content in, and I think they will do better.
Absolutely.
But I do hope you give some of this one to your friend Carl.
I hope he's listening, Carl. That's what you're getting for your birthday next spring. And now, because everything sounds better with a British accent, here's Peter from Vacation to talk about sedums.
Hello friends, Peter here, checking in from my latest vacation spot, jolly old England. Need to brush up on the accent, I'm travelling up a storm in retirement and it's been glorious. But I'm never too busy to voice a guest appearance on my favourite podcast. Now let's see what's the topic today. Sedums. Wait, you called me in from my mudlarking adventures to discuss sedums? Nope, this one's not for me. You're on your own, ladies. I'll see you next episode. Now, what's that topic? Looking at the list? Oh, no, that's a goodie. I'll put my trusty river trail down for that one. Until then, toodle pip.
Well, what a little sassy pants he got there, kid. I can't believe Peter, a little sassy. And I want to know, is there a difference between a river trowel and a regular trowel, Carol?
If there is, Peter knows all about it now.
Apparently, he'll have to tell us when he comes back from his mudlarking adventure. Or maybe our expert can tell us. Let's see who's up next on Expert Testimony.
Hi, I'm Sandy from Sandy's Plants. We are growers of perennials for rare roots and for Sandy's Plants in Zone 7, Richmond, Virginia. We've been growing plants for 40 years, and now we're shipping them all over the United States for rare roots. We are excited to have been asked to talk about 4 of our favorite sedums, but that was very hard to make that choice since we grow 50 different sedums. We based our selections on sedums that deer don't tend to eat, that don't tend to melt out easily, and that live for years and years. Easy to grow sedum. In general, sedums have to have well-drained soil. They cannot live in heavy soil, and they don't require much water. In fact, one of the easiest ways to kill a sedum is to water it too much. Even though it was difficult to select only 4 out of the 50 sedum that we grow, we chose sedum acre as one of the best sedums for a ground cover. It is evergreen. It very much resembles a whole forest of tiny Christmas trees. It changes the look of it completely when it's covered with yellow star-like flowers in the summer. The plant lends itself beautifully for pathways or borders, and you can take little pieces and plant tiny groups among stepping stones so that one plant can cover a lot of territory. Will tolerate moderate traffic, but being evergreen is quite an advantage. It's good in zones 4 through 8. Sedum Dazzleberry offers a contrast in color that's quite useful in a rock garden or in a planting. It's about 6 to 8 inches tall, and it will spread from 16 to 18 inches, remaining compact, and it has beautiful smoky blue-gray foliage, quite showy. And then the flower heads are a deep pink, and they last for a good while in the summer. Much showier than some of the other low sedums in a lot of different ways. It is a good combination to use with the Nepeta cat's pajamas. The colors seem to complement each other, and it makes a showy display for 5 to 6 months in a season. It is deciduous, meaning it goes away for the winter, but it's well worth its weight in the border in the other seasons. It does well in zone 4 through 9. Sedum tetratinum was our third selection. It's a sedum that is just as happy in the sun as it is in the shade. And as a gardener, I find that quite helpful because light changes as plants grow. It is about 3 to 4 inches tall with a spread of 12 or more inches. In sun, the stems have rustic green leaves, but when you plant it in shade, the leaves are shiny dark green. So the light makes the color very different in whatever location. In winter, the whole foliage takes on that russet color hue, very much like auburn color. It has yellow star-like blooms in the summer, and it is quite vigorous but very easy to control. Each stem has its own aerial roots, so if you're trying to find a plant that you can make go a long way, you can divide each little stem and plant it directly, and it's already rooted. It is evergreen, and it smothers out weeds quite well. Our fourth choice is a sedum that has a German name that I can't pronounce, so we're going to put the spelling on the screen. Von Steppenhammer's goal is the way I butcher its name, but it is a wonderful sedum. It's 4 to 5 inches tall and grows to about 12 inches wide. It has tight green rosettes of the succulent scallop leaves, and it forms a mound. The clusters of yellow flowers form in June, which adds a whole different dimension. But the exciting part is in the winter. The foliage turns bloody red, completely different look, which makes it nice in a rock garden or in a border. It is a plant that does not bird nest in the center. It continuously has new growth coming out of the center, which makes it maintain beautiful form year after year. It's evergreen, and it's good in zones 3 through 9.
So another fan of the Sun Sparkler series.
Yeah, she had some good ones. She stole a couple of the ones that I was thinking about talking about, so that's always fun.
That's a good sign that the expert knows what they're talking about when they read your mind before you even know what you were going to talk about.
Absolutely.